we're going to go to the Working Group podcast right now, an old mate Bomber, and we're going to have a look at a couple of clips from him last night, and one that joins into a pretty big whoopsie by David Cameron. So this first clip we're going to look at is Bomber's asking a really interesting question, basically saying when Russia does bad things, the West shits on them. When, when all these countries do bad things, when Iran does bad things, whatever, when Iraq, the West shits on them. When Israel does bad things, not so much. Why is that? Very interesting question. And we'll let his guest have an answer to it.
Irina, when Russia commits war crimes, the West criticizes and sanctions it. When Russia uses hunger as a weapon, the West criticizes and sanctions it. And when Russia targets media, infrastructure, and hospitals, the West criticize and sanction it. Yet when Israel does all of that on a vastly larger scale, tempered language from the West and no sanctions. Isn't Helen Clark already right? Haven't we already traded our independent foreign policy to America?
Well, we need to strongly condemn those strikes by Israel and Iran. Targeting a diplomatic post is a no-go zone. And New Zealand has a proud history over the last 2 decades of developing what has been widely respected in the world as an independent foreign policy.
Right.
We are the opposite of the kind of rhetoric that Damien has brought to this discussion. We have been able to be the adult in the room, and that's what I want from Aotearoa New Zealand now. Do we need to be a part of the ongoing conversations which are escalating these conflicts? Or do we need to be able to step back and actually say, we're well respected as a conduit in the Pacific, as a voice for a Pacific zone of peace?
Yeah.
We should continue that work, and we shouldn't be signing up to something which New Zealanders, by far and away, have not had a public conversation about yet. And there is not a democratic mandate for this government to be joining up to not only AUKUS Pillar 2, but this wider project of cozying up to one superpower at a time of rising tensions in the world.
So if you're not sure who that is, that's Irina Williams. She is the MP for Manurewa, I think, South Auckland. And yeah, pretty spectacular interaction there, Chewy. Got any thoughts?
I can't wait to hear from convicted fraudster Damien Grant. I'm sure he's got some sage and well-reasoned.
Do you know what? I don't think you're gonna in tonight's show. I think he's just a look.
Oh, fantastic! Okay, cool. Moving on. Sunny days. Yeah. Look, I think she's exactly right. Like, New Zealand does have an earned reputation for picking its own way. Yeah. We've stood up to allies before, and we've told them we're not happy. We have gone in different directions from them, and then we're able to turn around and go, well, yes, on this, you're right. We'll support your mission in Afghanistan, but Iraq is a bridge too far.
Yeah.
We don't like you using us as a shell game for your nuclear weapons during the Cold War. So we're going to pull out of this agreement. We've stood up to empires. We've stood up to big boys. And if we don't use that power to sort of turn around and go, that's wrong, that's right, regardless of who's doing it, then I think we're squandering what power we have, because we don't have huge military power. We don't have huge economic power. So the power to be that, most of the time we're on the right side of history, we use that power, that diplomatic power.
Yeah. And also, what about Irina Williams? If we haven't heard from her before, a bit of a firecracker there, like some of these younger people involved with New Zealand politics. There's some fire there, basically. I mean, we're not playing the Damien Grant commentary, but you can imagine what it is. Blah, 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 Zionist, blah, blah, blah. Israel's always right, blah, 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 and looked him down. I mean, it doesn't matter how old she is, but she's not that old, husband, 2 young children. And she is Māori, and she's living in Manurewa. That's where she's the MP for. It speaks, you look at people like her, and you look at people like Chloe and these young up-and-comers, you kind of think, oh, this is going to, 10 years from now, this is going to be an interesting political world we're living in as well. But yeah, let's have a look at the second part as well. And I've said you're not going to get any of Damien Grant, but I think pretty much it starts talking with his mug on the front cover. So you can have a look, but maybe not a touch. So this is the setup to the question. How am I going to do this? I'll do this whole bit first, and then I'll actually play you the bit from David Cameron. So we'll do this bit first, and then we'll do David Cameron. Same sort of thing. David Cameron basically saying what Iran does was bad. Interviewer saying, what if someone did it to our diplomatic place? David Cameron saying, well, we'd take that very seriously. That's the balls up you're going to hear, and this is what Bomber explains, and then asks a question.
Question. There's a clip from last night highlighting the double standards at play here, and I just want to run it through. David Cameron, this is him speaking. Iran attacking Israel was reckless. The journalist. What would Britain do if our consulate was flattened? David Cameron. Oh, we would take very strong action. The West are already hypocrites on this, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think an increasing number of observers who are getting more engaged with foreign policy are raising questions about the double standards of human rights and international law, and that might be seen as concerning to some. I think there are real concerns about what's happening. What the ICJ has called plausible genocide in Gaza. And I think just to bring it back to New Zealand, I think we could be asking harder questions as well about the complicity of New Zealand in what's going on in Israel. So we should be asking the government to give guarantees that no New Zealand intelligence is contributing to what is happening in Gaza.
Well, that's right. And we don't know that, do we?
I'm not sure. I've heard, cast iron undertakings from the government to that effect. I think, as being part of the Five Eyes, we are connected to the US and to the UK, and I think we should be having debates about those connections.
So that is Max Harris. Max Harris is a former advisor to John McDonnell MP, Labour MP in the UK, policy writer, academic, and author of New Zealand Project. So that's who you're hearing from there. Chewy, before we comment, I'll just go straight into that piece, because this is the piece that Bomber was setting it up with. This is the conversation with Lord Cameron, and this is him, I'm going to say showing his whole ass, but certainly stepping into a minefield of hypocrisy, and it doesn't go very well.
But what about Iran's frustration at part of its sovereign territory being flattened?
Well, I would argue there is a massive degree of difference between what Israel did in Damascus and, as I said, 301 weapons being launched by the state of Iran at the state of Israel. For the first time, a state-on-state attack. 101 ballistic missiles, 36 cruise missiles, 185 drones. That is a degree of difference. Yeah. And I think a reckless and dangerous thing for Iran to have done. And I think the whole world can see all these countries that have somehow wondered, well, what is the true nature of Iran? It's there in black and white. What would Britain do if a hostile nation flattened one of our consulates? Well, we would take the very strong action.
I'm just going to stroll into this one.
Look, what they did, as I said, was a massive attack.
So they were right to respond, but they overreacted, is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is that the attack they carried out was on a very large scale, much bigger than people expected. They have a right to respond. Well, countries have a right to respond when they feel they've suffered an aggression. Of course they do. But look at the scale of that response. Had those weapons not been shot down, there could have been thousands of casualties, including civilian casualties. I think that's a really important point to take into account.
There you go. So that was a longer clip of the clip that Bomber was talking about. And what a great point by the journalist. And this is what we've kind of been saying on some level all the way through, how actually, I won't say where, Chewy, you do what you want, but I've kind of said I'm going to stop apologising, denouncing the acts of Hamas. And it's not because I don't denounce the acts of Hamas. It's like when a left-leaning person goes on an interview, they say, do you denounce it? And the person goes, yes. But they never ask the other person, do you denounce the actions of Israel, the bombings of hospitals and stuff? And because they never ask that question, it's always set up in a lopsided way to say, sympathizers of Hamas worse, sympathizers of Israel right and proper. And it's a bit like what she did there, because she just basically flipped it to the equal and opposite. The equal and opposite of do you denounce Hamas is do you denounce Israel? She did it in front of him, and you heard the is it Elmer Fudd? Oh, Porky Pig. You heard the Porky Pig come out. And as we know from a lot of our Tory leaders, you don't mention Pig with him, but a lot of our Tory leaders seem to get that stutter when they get caught out in something. We might see that in our own Prime Minister as well. Sorry, I didn't mean to mention Pig with David Cameron.
A brave move to mention the word pig after discussing David Cameron. Look, I think any British leader discussing what he reckons should happen in the Middle East is fraught with danger, considering them and the French fucked up the entire region anyway when they just carved it up after they beat the Ottoman Empire. A lot of the issues that we have in that region stem from that, because they divided it up against religious lines. Just absolute insane behavior. They just pulled out an atlas and started drawing borders. But yes, if Russia had slammed a glide bomb into the UK embassy in Poland, what would happen? Like, realistically, what would happen? You would have the Royal Air Force staging directly out of Poland by the end of the week. Like, it'd be all on. If the US embassy in Germany got blown up, there would be a massive reaction.
Oh, in fact, we have
and I think
we've got evidence historically of that. It's called shock and awe. That's the American response to being attacked.
Absolutely.